who has done some great achievements as far as endurance running is concerned. So, shortly, I'm going to introduce her as well and welcome some other people to this live session organized by Margalla Trail Runners. So, I'm in today's session joined by Jennifer Kaiser Russo, and she's 52 years of age, a mother, and she works as a marketing consultant, and she is also a race director at Empower Ultras. She started running in her late 30s, and then she started endurance running as well. And during COVID time, she discovered what Backyard Ultra is, and then she got hooked to it, and then she broke a record in it. And her recent record is at Capital Backyard Ultra, May 2023, where she did 74 loops, an amazing achievement, 308 miles, and she is the current US record holder for number of loops. So, Jennifer, thank you so much, and I welcome you to this live interactive session with Margalla Trail Runners.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you so much for your time. So I'm gonna be joined by some of my friends from Margalla Trail Runners, Mr. Javed, who is the founder of Margalla Trail Runners, and then we will also be joined by Vakar Bhai as well. Vakar is one of the leading. Uh, he is the leading spirit with the MTR club, which is the premier trail running club in Pakistan. So just to give the viewers and Jennifer, you as well, about something, a few points about what Margalla Trail Running Club is. It's a running club primarily based in Islamabad. So Margalla Hills are right next to Islamabad, and that's why it's named Margalla Trail Runners. We keep organizing trail running every week, different activities, and over the years, it has organized some of the very unique and amazing races throughout the calendar year. And Backyard Ultra is also one of the races which has become now a permanent feature of Margalla MTR's running calendar. Uh, this year it's going to be the third Backyard Ultra, which is going to be organized at F9 Park in Islamabad. It's where the last two Backyard Ultras also took place. We had an amazing number of people attending. The number is growing actually. Now there is more and more interest as people got introduced to the format. And we are expecting some exciting loops this year as well, where athletes from not just from Islamabad, but they also come from Karachi and Lahore and other cities of Pakistan. So I'm not gonna take much of your time, and for our watchers and listeners, whatever you are. So I'm gonna just hand it over to Jennifer, and she uh, can perhaps tell us more about her running journey, how she got into running, how running has changed her, where is she now, and then how does she see running, where does actually she see running taking her in the future. So, Jennifer, uh, tell us about yourself and how has running changed you, and why uh, 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 running Backyard Ultras?
Okay. So I started running. I'm 58. I've got three children, and I started running when I was in my mid to late 30s as a way to just kind of lead a healthier lifestyle. And I thought, it was time to kind of adopt some healthier habits. So I just started running a little bit, just, a mile here or there, not far at all. And then I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we were getting our first marathon. And so a sister of mine who's a runner said, we should do a marathon. I thought, a marathon, that's so far, right? I'm like, I could never run a marathon. And then I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And so started running a marathon with my first marathon, and I had so much fun. And then I ran a couple marathons, and then I had my children and kind of took a break and then started back up again. And then when I was turning 50, I thought I should try and run 50 miles for my 50th birthday. But that seemed
Oh,
just,
wow.
so crazy. I thought I could never do that. And then I was terrified, but I ran 50 miles, and it was so much fun. I met all these people, and it was just like a big party in the woods. And when I was done, I thought, wow, that was really cool. Like, what else is there out there? And I think that's
Okay.
with this distance running, you surprise yourself. You do it and you're like, wow, it really wasn't that hard. What else is out there? What else can I do? So that's kind of how I got into the ultras. And so then I ran several 100 milers and really loved them, had a lot of fun. And then, as you were talking about, COVID happened, and I had been training for the Bigfoot 200, and then everything was getting canceled with COVID. So I was looking for some other things to do, and one of the things I did was, a friend of mine is a huge advocate for Alzheimer's as far as fundraising, and she's done some amazing things. So I told her I would run 100 miles on my little road
Okay.
to help raise money for Alzheimer's. So I live out the country. We've got a little private road that's about a half a mile long. So I went back and forth there for 22-ish hours running 100
All
miles
right.
to help raise money for Alzheimer's. So that was one way to deal with COVID, right? And then kept looking for other options, and the backyard format, because it's held on private property, they were allowed to kind of go with that back in 2020. So I thought, I didn't think I'd like it. It sounded awful. And I remember watching, some of the races at Bigs where people are running and I'm going to bed and waking up and they're still running. And I thought, that's just kind of awful, right? And then I thought, well, there's nothing else happening. I'll give it a try. So then I ran my first backyard at Ohio Backyard Ultra
Okay.
back in 2020. And it was actually so different than any other race. We start out on our loop and it's so relaxed. Everybody's just talking and telling stories. And it was so different than a real race, right? Because you're not in a big hurry, because you're just going to, get back and do it all again.
Yes.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun. I had no idea how I do. I was thinking, it probably wouldn't go all that well. And I remember, as the days went on, or the day went on, all of a sudden, I think there were maybe around 100 runners to start. And then all of a
Okay.
sudden we're down to 16. I thought, oh, I'm still here. And then 8,
Wow.
and then 4. And then it was down to 2 of us. And I think we were about 36 yards in. No, we went up to 154. So I guess about 36
Wow.
yards in. And it was Sunday night, and I hadn't eaten in about 10 hours. It had rained and it was super windy. I didn't have a tent anymore. So I come in with not a whole lot of time, and my husband was crewing me. And at the time, my 2 younger kids were home and they had school the next day, and they were calling. They're like, are you guys coming home? Because, we need a ride to school in the morning.
All right.
And originally my plan was that, if I kept going, I told my husband, if I'm still going Sunday night, you just go home and you can get the kids off to school in the morning, and I'll see what I can do just by myself. But at that point, I hadn't been feeling so good. And I thought, you know what, I'll be done, and we'll go home and we'll take care of the kids. But then the next day I was like, I feel great. Like, what's possible? I think I could maybe have gone longer. And so then I kind of got the backyard bug and decided to give it a try again the next year. So the second year I went back to the Ohio Backyard, and the field was crazy. There were a lot of really strong runners there, including Harvey Lewis, who everybody knows, or I think most people knew him before, but now especially everybody knows Harvey. So I thought, oh boy, this one's going to go really far. You have Harvey Lewis. Then there were other really great runners that had done really well in the backyard, like Gabe Rainwater and Jacob Conrad. And so I thought, this one's going to go a long time. And so we were running, and then I guess it was the Sunday evening, it suddenly was down to Harvey and I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble, right? Because, Harvey's obviously going to win this thing, but I'll hang on as long as I can. So it was just Harvey and I running for about 18 hours. And at one point Sunday night, he looked at me and he's like, he'd been running ahead of me, but he kind of slowed down and he was running a loop with me. And I was probably looking a little tired at that point. And he's like, well, how long do you want to go, Jennifer? And I'm like, well, I said, I thought it would probably go like 300 miles because, all these strong runners. And he's like, well, 300 is a really long way. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But and then finally, midday on Monday, I couldn't I was having a lot of breathing issues because it had been so cold, and I pulled something on behind my right or my left knee, and finally I threw in the towel. But it was a lot of fun, and he was very gracious. So that was kind of my second backyard. So, and it was enough we went 225 miles, so 54 yards, which was enough to qualify me for Bigs in 21. So that was really neat. So then in 21, I went to Bigs, and it was so cool. I ran with Courtney DeWalter and Maggie and all these other people. And, that's one of the super cool things about a backyard is that, I'm nowhere near that caliber of a runner, but here I am running with Courtney because, it's a backyard and everybody's going the same pace. And she was amazing. She was very sweet. I didn't do so well there. I think part of it was I felt so kind of out of my league. Here are all these amazing runners from all over, and here I am, just kind of a novice. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was a lot of fun. So I've done several of these now. After that, I went to Capital for the first time, trying to qualify again for the next year. So let's see. I guess it was 2022 was my first time at the Capital Backyard, and it was a great race. It was down to again, there was a great field of runners, but somehow I managed to be one of the last two there. It was down to Scott Snell and I, and it had been really hot, and the end kind of came on it was Monday night, and it had been so hot, and I was struggling to get in those last yards, and throughout the day, you're on the trail course, and then the road is the night loop. But throughout the day, it was so hot. I was not eating well. I was struggling to get in. And I kept thinking, I just have to make it to the road. If I can make it to the road, then I can, it'll be easier. I can slow down and it won't be so hot. So I got through my last day lap, and I got out to the road, and I just started walking. I'm like, oh, phew, I made it through the day. Now I just have to try and get through the night. So I'm just walking along, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking the race is over. I thought, I made it through the day, and I thought, okay, that race is over. And I thought now I'm starting this new race. I don't know if I want to be in this new race. I hadn't slept. I was sleep deprived. I was starting to lose my mind a little bit, I think. So I'm walking along, and all of a sudden I realized, oh no, this is the same race. And if I don't make it back, then I'm done. So I started running, and I saw Scott, and I'm like, I'm going to try and make it back, but I don't know if I'm going to make it back in time, because I wanted to keep going. And anyway, I ended up not making it back in time and timed out on that one. But it's all such a fun experience, and they're all so different, just the different people that you meet and the different challenges that you face. But Capital Backyard's a really neat race. And then this past year I went back. I'd been chasing that 300 miles for a while. I don't know why, but that was kind of the number I was trying to hit, was that 300 miles. And so at Capital this year, finally, after several tries, I was able to get there. And it was really neat because Scott Snell, who I ran against the previous year at Capital, knew that I'd been trying to hit that 300 mark. And so at one point he said to me, "Are you still going for 300 miles?" And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to get there. So there were four of us that decided, okay, this is what we're going to try and do. We'll try and work together and stick together and get to that 300-mile mark. So that was really neat. So we were all kind of helping each other. And that's another one of the fun things about the backyard. Ultimately you want to be, the last person standing, but along the way you need everybody else, right? So we were working together as a team to try and, get to that next level. And so I guess after we had made kind of that pact, a little while later, one of the guys ended up dropping out, and then there were three of us for quite a while. Levi was the third one, and he was such a great guy, but at some point he was having just a lot of stomach issues and wasn't able to go on. And then it was down to Scott and I, and it just, I don't know, it just seemed like for all the miles we had already done, to get to 300 just didn't seem that far. And it was really cool. I think at some point, the gal that was crewing me, Dagmar, said, she's like, "You just took the world record or something." And I thought, what's she talking about? It didn't register. I was like, that 300 number was what I was going for. And I thought,
So you had
I don't know what.
no idea about that time.
I knew what
So
the
you had
world
no
record
idea.
was, but I think
Okay.
I knew what the record was, but I think I just it wasn't in my head. I was so focused on just getting to that 300. And when she said that, I hadn't really been doing the math, and I just, I don't know. But and then then I kept running and it started to register. I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And anyway, so we did get to 300. We made it to 308, and then it had, for me, just kind of a downward spiral was starting. I have a lot of issues with my stomach and trying to eat, and hadn't slept much either. So, there's the whole sleep deprivation. So I ended up timing out in
I
my.
think it can be normal after 308 miles. I mean, having a stomach.
Yes. Sadly, it seems to
All right.
happen before
So
that for me.
something amazing, and I was just listening to your story. This is quite a journey within a span of, let's say, 4 years. From COVID time. In 4 years, this is a way to cover. Uh, but what is your backyard ultra philosophy? I mean, they can be made that, but why do you keep returning to these backyard ultras?
I don't know. No. I keep saying I'm gonna be done because they I don't know, but you get caught up, and I think the biggest thing is that you do one, and after you're done, like I mean, that hitting that 308 mark was amazing, right? I still have never won one though, right? And I still keep,
Huh.
so that's part of it. I keep thinking one of these days it would actually be great to be the last person standing. But I think too, like
Yeah.
every time you do one, something is left on the table. Like, there's like, I feel like I could have gone further. Like at 308 miles, my body was okay. I didn't have any injuries. It was
Okay.
the stomach and the sleep.
Mhm.
So then you keep thinking, okay, well, if I can get a handle on the nutrition, if I can figure out how to keep my stomach in check and maybe get a little bit of sleep, what else is possible? I think that's the biggest thing. You just,
Mhm.
feeling like, and even the people that do win, they didn't necessarily reach their limit, right? Because they had to stop because
Right.
their assist stopped. So it's just this crazy game of, how far can I go? What else is possible? But it it is amazing. And for anybody new that's getting into it, it can be very intimidating. And I hate to say this, but I think that might be why some people don't do it. They're afraid of jumping in. They feel like they've got
Yes.
to hit a certain number, but it really it can be intimidating, but it's just one more loop. But it's amazing what you can do in that format. You don't have to be fast. You just have to be fast enough, right? Because I'm certainly not a fast runner, but you just have to be fast enough to get in time and be able to take care of a few things. And so much of it is strategy, just figuring out how to time those loops, what your stomach can tolerate, if you can figure out a way to get a little bit of sleep. There's so many different little pieces that that come into play. But it is
Of
a fun
course, of course.
format.
I'm just gonna ask only one asking question in this session. So Vakar, Khatak, and Javed, jump in whenever you can. So, but I do have one very important question, and I think a lot of people want to know that. 4 years, you have come a long way. We all run these long runs at some point, and then we want to sort of get into the sort of fitness or a level of endurance where we can, let's say, go 100 kilometer or 150 kilometer. I think a lot of people like me who are watching this session, especially people who are going to be at MTR's Backyard Ultra on December 9th. Let's say you have a race coming up in 1 month. How do you train yourself for that? I mean, I don't want people to do. I cannot think like everybody will be doing like 308 or something like that.
Oh,
How do you push yourself? How do you train yourself to get the maximum as much as
Okay. So I kind of missed some of that, but as far as training goes, I think one of the biggest things, it's a fine line between running enough and running too much, and especially as you get, older, there can be too much. So I think the biggest thing is to really focus on, you've got to have some quality runs in there. So maybe you are doing, even though you don't really need speed, I think speed work can be an important part to do some of that in your training just for discipline and running economy. But really it boils down to the long runs and just being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Those long runs are hard. And I think a lot of it is if you can do some back-to-back long runs. And a lot of people, myself included, I guess at times will do some different things, like, in the getting up really, really early in the morning and going for, jumping out of bed and going for like a long run, just getting used to having to, that some of that sleep deprivation, some of the running in the middle of the night, that those kind of things I think can be helpful. When I first started doing the backyard, I did practice doing some of the loops where, I would run a 4.167 mile loop and then take a little break. And a lot of that can be helpful when you're first starting out, just so that you can figure out how much time, those 3 to 7 minutes, what can you get done in that time? How much can you eat? Can you practice a quick little nap? All those things I think kind of come into play. But really, I think it boils down to just kind of slowly building up that mileage. You don't really necessarily need a ton of mileage. You just need enough that your body is conditioned to run that far and not break down. But then beyond that, so much of it is just, it's in your head. It's that mental toughness, knowing that it's going to get hard and it's going to hurt, but just, having your why in your mind, your reason for going. What's going to make you get back out on that next loop, those sorts of things. So I think the mental aspect is maybe even more important than the physical when it comes to a backyard. And a lot of ultra races, I think that can be the case.
Thank you, Jennifer, for such a lovely journey. And part of my question you already answered, like, how you prepare yourself for mentally and physical as well. I mean, maybe they're different for different preparation for different athlete, and on some part you already talk about it. Question I want to know is how you handle your fatigue during, these long backyard ultra. Uh, from that perspective, if you can let us know something, how you handle your
Sure.
fatigue.
So one of the key things is it seems crazy, but even if you can lay down for a minute, it all helps. So with the backyard, so usually the first 24 hours, I don't try and sleep, but it is nice to come back in and get off your feet. We actually, our race company we host our own backyard. And one of the things I would see with some people is they'd come in between their loops and they'd stand around talking or doing whatever. And if you really have that mindset that you're going to go a long time, even starting early on, I think it's important to come in, sit down, put your feet up, and just try and, rest a little bit to kind of regroup. And then, especially after the 24-hour mark, if you can come in with a little extra time to sleep, and maybe you're not sleeping, but if you're just laying down and closing your eyes and putting your feet up, all of that can help to kind of recharge you. And then, too, at night, a lot of times, along the road section where it's not technical, you can get away with just kind of relaxing a little bit more. And you may even be kind of closing your eyes a little bit when you're running, but you got to be careful. You don't want to run off the side of the road, but just like little things like that. But I think the biggest way to recharge is just in between loops. If you can just get a short little nap. And it is amazing because you may feel just so incredibly tired, but it doesn't necessarily get worse. You may get a second wind, especially when the sun rises. That tends to bring, new life. So even though you feel exhausted, it won't necessarily get worse. You can re-energize, but just those little power naps. And even if you're not napping, just if you can just get off your feet, close your eyes, lay down, and it will kind of help to re-energize you.
Thank you. I think this is the same question from Dr. Ghulam on the Facebook live stream as well. Another thing which I would like to, you talk about the mental barrier, and Was it something you set 300 mile in your mind, and then once you reach there, then it becomes something like you have achieved, and then, you know,
That can be so true. In fact, everybody says don't ever put a number in your head, for a backyard, because then when you get there, then your body just shuts down and says, that's it, right? I hit my number, I'm done. And that may have been part of it. I hit that 300. And it's funny because I told you we had kind of a pact between four of us, right? We were going to go for 300 miles. Well, then at one point, I think it was down to Scott and I, and he's like, I think there was Scott, Levi, and I. And he said, well, what do we do when we get to 300? Do we stop, or do we keep going? And of course, we all knew you keep going, right? But we got to 300, and I remember Scott looking back to see, like, okay, is she done? We hit 300, but I had no intention of stopping because I still really felt great. So was part of that decline in my head because I hit my goal? Maybe, I don't really know. I did. And maybe then I was at that point, I was like, okay, it's okay to like relax now. You know what I mean? Because I hit that number. That very well may be a part of it. I do remember just the fatigue being overwhelming, around 308 out on the trails. You kind of are in another world, you just I think the things don't necessarily seem real because you're tired. And the stomach again, I was fighting through that stomach, and I had, I don't know, that's all part of it. But yeah, that's a great question. And I think that is part of it. So now we just have to keep setting that number higher and higher.
All right. And, just coming back to the part you talk about this. So, yeah, it will come, you start running like 100, 200, while definitely everyone. So what is the best advice to, from nutrition, how to adjust while, before going to such type of competition? So what the best practice you can the audience from nutrition point of view, how to train your
Okay, I'm losing a little bit there, but I think the question is about nutrition and how to
question if
fuel
I'm
during the backyard.
yeah,
I think,
yes,
Jennifer, can you hear me?
Yes. We're kind of cutting in and out, but as far as nutrition goes, that's something, I'm still trying to figure out. And I think
Nutrition, yes.
so as far as fueling for a backyard, I think everybody's different, but what I try to shoot for is like around 250 calories an hour. And I think that sounds like a lot, and it kind of is a lot, but I think it's really important to that you've got a steady stream of calories every hour. 250, it's really not that much. So I'll do a lot of like instant mashed potatoes, or things that are pretty mild. I think especially later in the race, it's really great if you can be drinking your calories, because you get tired and you don't necessarily feel like chewing, and then it's just more to digest. So I think instant mashed potatoes are one of those things that worked really well for me. I know at Capitol toward the end, my crew was amazing. They had a little blender. And so they would take like a protein drink or like a meal replacement drink type thing and blend it with like avocado and just, anything that has just a lot of calories. And if you're struggling with real food, there's some gels that you can take. So I still have
So
not
it's basically
mastered the food.
a mixture.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely a mixture. And you want to, it's so easy to get sweet food, and sweet food has a lot of calories, but then I think a lot, it just doesn't taste good after a while, and your stomach doesn't necessarily like it. So
Right.
trying to find that
Okay, so
combination.
all right. Okay. So he was fine. You thought that you could go on. And I think that was also that happened with me when I my first one, but mentally I gave up. So how do you deal with that barrier mentally, or how do you engage yourself mentally loose?
Oh, it's, it just depends, and it's different every race, I think. And there are plenty of
Mm.
times, like, in even my first backyard, I remember thinking, okay, I made it to the final 16. That's pretty good. I could stop now. But you just have to keep telling yourself
Mm.
one more. You have to take it one loop at a time. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is it's so easy to get caught up in what everybody else around you is doing, and to get intimidated by looking at, these runners are clearly much better runners than I am. And it's so
Yeah.
easy to get intimidated and to think, start thinking too far ahead, like how long are we going to be out here? How long is this going to go? And I think I had the most success when I just tuned all of that out and just focused on what I was out to achieve. Like, for example, at Capital, sure, it would have been great to win it, but I wasn't focused on winning it. I
Yeah.
just told myself, this is my race and I want to hit 300 miles. And that's it. That's what I'm going for. And don't get me
Mm.
wrong, there's plenty of times throughout that 300 miles where, I'm tired, my feet hurt, whatever it is. I don't feel good. I want to sleep, you just want to stop. But if you can
Right.
you just have to keep telling yourself, just do one more, what's one more?
Mm.
And it's different than like a mountain race where, you know, you may not see another aid station for 5 hours, right? In an hour, you'll be back there. So just go one
Right.
more, and just keep telling yourself. And it will get hard, but then it'll get easier. And at Capital, I think when we hit maybe around 200 and some miles, like once we
Uh,
went over 200, I thought, we've already got all that behind us. What's another, 50 miles, 100 miles, So I think it's
all
so
right.
much of, just putting it in perspective.
Right. I get that. So we are 2 weeks from the race now. I know we all run marathons as well, so we know that the week before the marathon is very important. You start tapering around like 2 weeks,
Mhm.
2 to 3 weeks time, and then last 3 4 days, how you fuel yourself, how you carb load. So, what would you suggest to be those who are watching, that how should we take these 2 weeks, prepare ourselves, or to perform better, or what is your strategy to be
So,
more precise?
so at this, yeah. So at this point, you're so close. No more training is gonna. I think sometimes people at the last minute think, "Oh no, I didn't do enough speed work," or whatever. Now's not the time, right? Now's the time to just
Right.
trust your training, right? You've got to just trust your training. I think the things that you can do, the most important things to do right now are, all those little self-care things. Like if you can stretch, and I mean, don't do anything that you wouldn't normally do, but focus on kind of your recovery. Making a plan, I think, is key to think forward to your race. Make sure you've got a plan, you've got all your supplies, you've got everything you need. It's a good time to focus on kind of your mental strategy. Just think through, why are you doing this? What are your reasons? And if you can really build a solid mental strategy, that will help. And kind of coming up with a game plan for your race. So, and also if you could get some good sleep, right? Eat well, sleep well. Those will really help. Go into the race with some good sleep now, because a few nights before the race, you may not be sleeping so well, right? If you're nervous about it.
Of course, of course. uh, so should I have many more questions, trust me. So should I keep on going? Javed, let me know when you run short
I
on
have a
time, or when
question.
you. Okay. Let's hear it from Javed. Yes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for detail regarding the ultras and ultra. My first question is this: how much weekly mileage is important for the preparation of ultras, and especially for the backyard ultra?
So that, again, that's a very subjective question. It's very different for everybody. I would say, you know, maybe 70 miles a week is kind of what I would average during a training period. But there will be sometimes a few weeks where I'll get hit 100 miles a week. But I'm probably more of a low volume trainer. I do like to, if I can, get a couple 100-mile weeks in, just if I'm feeling good. But I don't think that's necessary. I think a lot of it is that you just have enough training on your legs, and then so much of it, again, is in your head.
One more question regarding you did one of the American record holder of 74. Then in the Backyard Ultra, you did.
Yes.
What was you thinking? Your target was to achieve break the 74 loops, or you have to not physically that when didn't go or break the record of 74? You you were feeling not good for that time you finished that race after finishing 53 loops.
Yeah. So Biggs, I don't know what it is. Every time I've been there, I haven't done very well. And I was hoping for a lot more there. And I'm not, it's always kind of a combination of things. I went into it feeling pretty good about it. And it's a beautiful trail. It's a difficult trail. And I think it was a combination of things there. There were two. So the second night got pretty cold and it was super dusty, and I was really struggling to breathe because I got all the dust and the cold air affects my lungs a lot. So by the third day, I was really struggling to breathe and I was having some stomach issues, and I was fighting to get in on time on that trail, and I fell several times. And that last day I came back, you go out, you do the road, then you come back in, and I needed to stop at the bathroom. And then I got back out on the trail and I had fallen a few times, and it slowed me down enough that I didn't make it back in time. And I don't know why, I felt pretty well trained going into it, but I started that downward spiral, and I just kept getting slower and slower, and I wasn't able to make it back in time. So it was disappointing. I was hoping for a lot more there, but just kind of a combination of things. It was funny. My second to last lap, I was fighting so hard to get in, and there was a Japanese runner behind me, and he came up behind me and he's like, time, like he didn't speak English. He's like, time. And I said, we've got 8.5 minutes. I said, go ahead, but you've got to go. And so it was the last time up at Biggs, and he turned around and he looked at me and he's like, no walk, run. And I'm like, okay, and I'm trying, but I can't breathe, and I'm fighting to get up the hill, and we made it back in time with I don't know, maybe a minute, 30 seconds, not much time. Oh, wow. And we both went out again on another lap, but just, it just didn't work out, sadly. But I still, I'm not done.
So right. it depends on the course to course. It's not necessary if someone has done earlier more loops, and not necessary that he or she can do more loops to the previous. So it's as Lex has mentioned that it's difficult as compared to other Backyard Ultras.
It is, yes.
Okay,
and
so
how in the night time you were running you were running in the road portion, and the daytime you were running on the trail. So how trail is a bit easy as compared to roads, or road was a bit harding?
So at Biggs, the trail course is much harder. It's very rocky, rooty, that kind of thing. So it's a lot more technical of a course. The road or the trail loop is at Biggs. The road loop is fine. The road loop is not a big deal. Yeah.
All right. So Jennifer, can you hear me? Right? I think I lost you guys for a bit. One thing that I think a lot of people think about that when it comes to race strategy, for newbies as well, how do you utilize your rest time? For some people it is 10 minutes, for some it is 5, for some it is 20 minutes. So what do you do when you get back to the loop and then you have to get ready or you have to start the next loop? So how do you spend or how do you strategize those, let's say, 15, 10, 5 minutes, or whatever you got?
It depends on where we are in the race, but initially in the beginning of the race, there's not much to do. So the biggest thing is making sure I'm eating. So some people take food with them out on the course. I usually don't. I usually just try to eat when I'm back at camp. So the biggest thing is eating. That's like the number one priority. And then if you can do a couple of quick stretches every yard too, that would be very helpful. So quick stretching and eating in the beginning. And then as more time goes on, the sleeping becomes much more of a priority. So maybe trying to eat something really quick when you get back to camp and then lay down and close your eyes, and maybe do some stretching. Those are really the key things, and I always carry water out on the course. So, but eating, drinking, sleeping, stretching, and then obviously, there are times where you're changing your shoes or those sorts of things. But those are really the eating is probably the number one.
Okay, got
Followed
it.
by stretching and then
And
sleeping.
how do you find, because you keep on going through day and night. So do you feel any difference, or do you strategize it differently, the loops that you run during the daytime and the loops that you run during the nighttime? And do the nighttime fatigues you more, or you find it more easier? What
So
is your take on that? Because I think this is something that we all go through and only learn by experience, but we want to know that what your experience is.
So the day loops, a lot of times I think one of the best strategies during the day loop is to take it nice and easy. And I think sometimes I get caught up with other runners and we start talking, and then I'm not really paying attention to running my own race. I'm kind of just going with what everybody else is doing because we're having a nice conversation. But I think one of the biggest things is during the day loops, just take them easy.
Okay.
Because you're probably not really sleeping. So minimize your energy out there during the day. And then at night,
We do a lot of conversations during the daytime, because you meet
yes,
a number of people even on the loop who are not running. So
right.
yeah.
Right. And it's nice because it makes the time go really fast. When
Yes.
the day can fly by if you're running with, different people and hearing about their stories, it can make the time go really fast. But then at night, I think different people have different strategies, and I've tried different things. Sometimes I'll just take them very slow and easy, and other times I'll try and take them a little faster to allow time to sleep. So a lot of it depends on if you're going to try and sleep. And if you are, do you have a road loop at your race that you've got coming up?
So it's a gravel loop. It's in a park, which is at a
Okay.
protected place. During
Mhm.
daytime, we get a lot of people, picnickers, people playing cricket, people that
Mhm.
otherwise who are just coming there for a walk, and the backyard ultra is going on. Uh,
Okay. So it's the same loop for day and night on yours?
yeah, it's the same loop for
Okay.
them.
Okay. So, and if it's not too challenging of a loop, at night, you can maybe try and take it a little faster, and so that you could come in and have time
Interesting,
to close your eyes.
interesting. Because
Yeah.
at night you should try to get more rest.
Yes, but not to the point where you're pushing too hard. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Because if you're pushing too hard to get rest, then you come in and you're not relaxed, and you probably won't be able to sleep anyway. And you want to minimize. I think the number one priority should be to keep your effort easy so
All
you can
right.
last longer.
Okay. Great. Bakar bhai.
Okay, Jennifer, just wanted to a few questions regarding technical questions. Was you monitoring your HR heart rate? You were running in a zone 1, 2, or 3, or 4?
I don't have a heart rate monitor that I use when I'm running. But I would say, yeah, definitely zone 1 or 2. I mean, very, very low. You don't want to be pushing too hard because you don't want to wear yourself out. If you can just take it nice and easy, you can go forever.
Jennifer,
Okay.
one question. I just want to ask you from kids' point of view. Running for 24 hours and then 48 hours and then moving up. So, I mean, you don't get challenged from the kids, from the family, like, that's enough, you don't do more things like that. How you cope with it?
Do
That's
the kids come running after you?
Okay. So my youngest, my daughter, has helped crew me a few times at the Ohio Backyard, and she's been absolutely amazing.
Wow.
But it is hard, like they are, like, I know she's proud of me, but I think at the same time, you're right. There becomes a point where that's enough, so it's a fine line. And they worry because after running for that long, I'm not looking so good. I'm looking a little rough. I'm tired. I'm hurting. And they don't. They don't want to see me tired and hurting. So it does make it difficult, and it's a challenge. My husband he can get very stressed out because it is a lot. But they've been great, and they've been very supportive. But yes, there is some of that.
I can imagine. Can I ask
Yeah.
can I ask a rookie question?
Sure.
So there is some debate going on in your mind when you are running backyard ultras, that when do you call it when do you call it a quit? You don't want to get injured. You don't want to push yourself into a phase where you get actually injured during a race. So between the pulling yourself, keep going, and then that injury, there's a very fine line. How far do you
Yes.
go with that? So what would be the deciding factor in your mind or in your experience, what you have seen, that when to call it a quit during a backyard?
Oh, yeah, that is tough because the time when it was just Harvey and I don't know if I had a bunch of a choice. I could have maybe gone longer, but I had pulled something and it was black and blue and it was bad. But it wasn't, I didn't break anything. But after that, it took me a good 6 weeks before I could run again because I had pulled something. But it's so hard because there are times, and I think we've all experienced it, where you're running and something really hurts, but you don't know, is it going to just go away, or is it something more serious? So it's really hard to say. And I guess the other
I hope it's
side
not
of that,
something like when you start hearing voices or start saying things that are not there.
keep going. You're fine.
In that case, keep going. Okay.
Keep
Just
going.
one more loop.
You just
Just one more
making a
loop.
note of it, actually.
yes, you just need a little nap maybe, or maybe some
All right.
caffeine. Caffeine can
Okay.
help.
Okay.
And as far as injury goes, it's really you have to be the judge of that. There are a lot of times where we think something is really injured, but it's not, and you just have to run through it. And then there are other times where it is more serious. So a lot of it depends on your goals. I mean, if this is your A race and you're going to put it all out there, then that's what you do. But people have life and jobs and kids, right? You don't want to, you want to be able to take care of all of that when you're done.
So you don't have a marker in your mind. You don't have a number in your mind when you are running that, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then after that, I will decide.
So far, my goals have been up here, so it's so hard to get there. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Jennifer, how you during the loop, during the run, especially in the this backyard ultra, do you prefer to listen music or podcast or any favorite book, something like that, or you just focus on keep running, or just divert your mind if you listen to music, that helps a lot. So
Yes.
do you strategize things like that during the run?
So during the day, I don't ever listen to music. At night, I always have music and maybe an audiobook or a podcast, but I don't always use them. Like at Biggs, there were a lot of conversations even at night. And sometimes if you put in music and then somebody comes up and they want to talk just to help stay awake, then it's then you can't hear them. So I always have it available because it can be very helpful, especially if it's down to just a few people and you're tired. Music can be a good boost. I always say music and caffeine can be mood changers, right?
Oh.
They can both really lift you up and give you a little extra energy. But a lot of times I find I don't end up using it.
Okay.
I do remember one time trying to listen to an audiobook, but I was so tired, I couldn't pay attention to what was going on. So that didn't work very well.
No, I get. So we have another question actually from one of one of our amazing runners, Yava Siddiqui. He's asking about the fueling. What's your best fuel?
I would have to say mashed potatoes. I listened to an audiobook, but I was so tired, I couldn't pay attention to what was going on, so that didn't. So I think the number one thing for me is mashed potatoes or cream of wheat. Those two things are really good because you can make them really thin and drink them. Also, I do like, especially when it's cold, the Tailwind recovery drink hot, like make that hot. And it's got a lot of calories. It's got everything you need in there. So those are kind of my go-tos, I would say.
Oh, what do you mean when you say recovery drink and hot? And can you explain that a little?
Sure. So there's a million different types of sports drinks out there, and Tailwind is one that's kind of popular here. And they've got a recovery version. So it's got more protein, more calories, that kind of thing. And so it's just a powder. And so I'll mix that with hot water. And at night, I'll take that out. Like maybe I'll wear a vest with bottles, and I'll take that out and kind of drink that throughout the night. That's kind of a nice, especially if it's cold. That's kind of a nice.
So have it more like a tea or coffee.
Yeah.
It's an energy drink / coffee, right?
There you go.
So we are expecting a lot of milk tea during the run.
I will have coffee sometimes, but yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from Aver Senifi. So strength work for preparing your.
So I think you kind of froze on me there, but the question is it about doing strength exercises? And if so, I think that is super important. I do like to incorporate strength work maybe 3 times a week. And I think a lot of that can be very helpful for injury prevention. Like the areas that are prone to injury, your feet, your calves, your hips, those sorts of things. So I think cross training can be hugely beneficial just so that your whole everything's solid, core work, those sorts of things I think can be very powerful, because if you've got a strong core and you're working on keeping your hips and your glutes and everything strong, I think that goes a long way to helping prevent injury.
So you mostly focus on the body and the abs, or are the upper body too?
I like strength work, so I'll do the full body. I'll do upper body, lower body. I'll do it all. But yeah, I think too, like after you've been running for a while, you probably have a good sense on what, especially in a long race, like what tends to go wrong or where you might get injured. So you can kind of focus on those things, like, hamstrings and glutes, I think, and calves, I think, can be a big part of that. And just mobility, some mobility work can be beneficial.
Do you love to run on mountain?
So I love to run on mountains, and I like a Bigfoot 200 was one of my favorite races. It's a point-to-point race, and it's just beautiful. It's hard, it's very hard, and I don't do well with altitude, so it was especially challenging, but it's just beautiful. Backyards are fun, and they're a different kind of challenge, but when you do a lot of backyards, then I kind of miss being out there, in the wilderness, exploring and seeing new things other than the same loop every hour. So yeah.
Just those who love to run on mountains, those who are used to run on trails, they have their all muscles while up ascending, because benefit for that they are running on trails, because if you are going up, your different muscle uses. If you are going down, you are running down, uses.
Definitely. Right. I wish we had mountains. There are no mountains out where I live, sadly, but you're right. I think just that changing, because when you're running flat, you're more prone to injury, because you're just, it's a lot of the same movements, whereas the mountains and the trails, you're moving in so many different planes that it's beneficial. Yeah, for sure. Plus, it's good for your lungs, right?
How different kind of runs are for the runner, for the runner, because he or she is doing Indian play to do suppose we can say that a trail run repeats is kind of a speed hiking.
So I kind of lost some of that there, but I think it is important to do different types of runs. I think the flat runs can be beneficial, especially the backyards that we have. The road portions are usually fairly flat and you're on road. So I think it is important to incorporate, some of that road running just so you're ready for it. But I think it is great to do some, hill repeats and some speed work as well, just to keep you overall conditioned, because you're working different things. You're working different muscles, you're working your lungs more with the speed work, those sorts of things. Yeah.
We have a couple of from the Shamas Ghazi that he's asking that you encountered obstacles during the race in ultras, and how did you adapt to overcome obstacles? Kind of you are not thinking that kind of
so unexpected things during the race. I'm just trying to think what has come up. I mean, there's, you're going to deal with the standard things that usually come up, like, blisters or, an upset stomach. So the blisters are easy, right? Especially if you've got a good crew person, they'll, help you pop them, tape them, that sort of thing. And I have had, like knee pain pretty bad, but then I've taped it and just kept going, and eventually it got better. There's things like that. And then the stomach is always an issue. And I think the biggest thing is just trying to, when anything unexpected comes up, trying not to freak out about it, right? Because you have to remember that things don't always get worse, right? Whether it's knee pain or an upset stomach, there's a chance it'll get worse, but there's also a chance that you'll get through it and it'll get better. And you just have to keep, focusing on one loop at a time, and not try and think too far ahead.
I think from this also shared detail, but just wanted to you can say in a very short way that have you ever faced a point in this where you considered giving up, but you tried to continue, and what things you motivated to keep continuing?
Yes, there's many times where. Oh,
yes, please.
There are many times where, I think about stopping. There's so many stories you can make up or reasons you can give yourself to stop running. But I think the biggest thing is to try and talk yourself out of it and maybe just focus on, again, staying present. I think is one of the biggest things pieces of advice I can give is just trying to stay present and not look too far ahead, and just tell yourself you just one more loop. Or a lot of times what can be helpful is counting down until morning. I've got 5 more hours till the sun comes up again. And that's kind of something to look forward to, just trying to give yourself little things to look forward to, and to kind of remember while you're out there, try and maybe have a list. Like sometimes I'll have a list of motivational things from my kids or reasons that I'll put together of, why am I doing this? What's my why? Because when you're in the middle of it and you're tired and you want to stop, it's so easy to throw in the towel and give up. But if you could remind yourself why you're doing this and why it's important to keep going, that can be a huge help.
Question you have to advise to those who want to start running. You already said that we are at the late 30s. So how what you advise them, he or she, but especially for the females in Pakistan, it's kind of a very limited running in Pakistan.
So, I started running later, and once I did, it just, I don't know, there was something about it that gave me just so much more confidence, I think. And it just made, just physically, you feel so much better. But then also mentally, as you start running and you make some positive changes, and then you're making some good progress and you see the different things that you can accomplish, it can be life-changing. I mean, it just really can give you a big self-confidence boost. And yes, it is just running, but there's something about having these goals and achieving these goals that can just really kind of carry you forward. And two, when you're running and you're doing hard things, you're facing challenges and you're overcoming them. And even though this challenge may be just about this race, it gives you, I think, just some of the tools to help you overcome other things in life. Like, I think it can really kind of translate to all areas of your life. So much of it is believing in yourself too, right? Just that, we are the story we tell ourselves.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Everyone has to start from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Because I started running 5 years back in 2017. That time I was naive and I can run just 5 kilometers, and
that's great.
Not those. I am a mature runner, but I can run 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers to that.
Right. That's great. I know when I first started running, I couldn't even run a mile and I had to walk. And you just gradually build up, and it's amazing what you can do. Yep. That's very cool. I would love to see more.
Yeah. Please keep.
Oh, I was just going to say, I would love to see, more women out there running and especially in the backyard. I would love to see, the numbers are surprisingly low. So I would love to see more women get into the backyard, because it's not, the playing field in a backyard is much more even, across male and female and age and all those sorts of things, because it's all about, not necessarily how fast you are or how strong you are. It's how, just mentally, if you can keep pushing yourself to go further. So yeah, I think anybody can do well if they give it a try.
Jennifer, just one question, Javed. Yeah. It's a kind of my favorite question, which I usually ask, and that is about recommending any book for amateur runners regarding running or backyard ultra, a podcast book, preferably,
Yes. Oh my gosh. You know what? I cannot think of one off the top of my head. I haven't really read that many running books. I think there are a lot of great resources out there, though, and a lot of great podcasts. There's the Backyard Ultra podcast. If you're looking for something specifically about backyards, that's kind of a fun one, because they interview like just backyard runners, but that can be interesting. There's some fun stories from other backyard runners on that one. Oh, sorry, I don't have a better answer for you there. I can't really think of a great book for beginners, but there are a lot of great things out there.
Thank you.
Rahman bhai, can you hear us? Rahman, can you hear? Last, what do you want to say? Backyard Ultra, Margalla Backyard Ultra.
I'm sorry, what was that? Can you say that?
What to say? The running community of Pakistan here to start running, start to participate. This kind of even recently we held in Islamabad. I think it was 200 participation, and there were females too, and also it was very well organized. And we have a limited kind of a races here in Pakistan, but still the community is also growing day by day.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
that's very exciting.
Really exciting. It's kind of because somewhere have to start kind of for healthy activities. It's not necessary you want to be. If somebody want to be healthy, and he or she has to run or walk or hike somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's so cool that you're doing this, and I really love that you're doing a backyard I think so much of it is just taking that first step, right? Just getting out there and moving and starting to get into the running. And I'm really excited to see what your backyarders do on December 9th. That's really cool. And hopefully people aren't afraid to jump in, you know what I mean? And like you were saying, just give it a try, because you just 1 yard at a time, right? There, no pressure to go really far. It's just what you can do, right? And what you can do right now. And, and then see where that takes you and grow with it, right?
So
thank you,
Jennifer,
thank you so much, Jennifer.
From you, and
you're welcome.
We yes. So I think we have learned a lot in this session, and I might be needing another session on how to recover from backyard ultras. And so
You bet.
Thank you so much once again. You guys can hear me, right? I have trouble with my signal, so if you can hear me. Thank you, Backyard session with me. It was a pleasure having such an who is a mother running in her late 30s. With age, even without it, this extraordinary. And Jennifer, kudos to you for what you have achieved, and we wish you all the best for number will be running hopefully. And you took your time out. It all of us. We thank you on behalf of not just the three of us, but also on behalf of all the Margalla Trail Running Club and the runners who are watching. Thank you once again, and for everyone watching, we will have Jennifer back for you someday. So stay tuned and keep watching these live interactive sessions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you.
Best of luck to all of you. Yes.
Thank you.